Welcome back, everyone. You're watching the Dr. Nandi Show. Pretty exciting show, I'll tell you. Today, I'm hoping to help people make big improvements in their lives. I brought together some of America's most powerful motivators. They're experts at helping people find purpose and live authentically. But they also know from personal experience how tough making decisions and changes can be. In college, my next guest was so crippled by depression that he dropped out and moved back with his mom and dad. But after several months, as a near shut-in, he realized that somehow his life had come to a standstill. Ben Nemtin, a good friend of mine, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So this is a man who played ball with President Obama. Tell me what that was like.
Well, first of all, we were completely shocked because we didn't think it was going to happen.
Yeah.
We had, one of the things on the list is to play basketball with President Obama. And we had no connections to the White House, so we just drove to D.C. And first thing, we started asking people on the street if they knew President Obama, which they didn't. So we ended up just lobbying in D.C. to try and get meetings with people in the administration, and ultimately found out that his personal aide set up all the basketball games. And we put in the request, got denied, but we got invited back to the White House just to see the courts. And while we were on the courts shooting around, we thought he was out of town, and President Obama just strolled on the White House basketball courts and surprised us, and so we got to play basketball with him.
Did you dunk on him?
Oh yeah, many times.
Of course you did.
No. I mean, he is an incredible human being. I mean,
Yeah.
as
pretty good basketball player too. I think he played
very good basketball player.
Maybe college or something. But
yeah.
But back to you. You were a super high achiever, and people called you a success, and then you reached an emotional rock bottom. Maybe walk us through that. What happened?
Yeah, so I've always put a lot of pressure on myself and to do well, and it worked. I had an academic scholarship. I made the U21 national rugby team. I'm from Canada, so rugby is a huge sport in Canada. And we were training for the World Cup in France, and I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to perform at the World Cup. And I stopped sleeping, and ultimately I slid into a depression, which I basically dropped out of school. I got dropped from the rugby team, and for me, I had sort of lost everything. And I was just a shut-in my parents' house.
Wow. So did you hit rock bottom and then you were dropped from the rugby team, or were you dropped from the rugby team?
It was all the same time. Yeah, I was just, I just got shut into my parents' house, and I couldn't go to school, couldn't go to practice, and ultimately led to, I was basically crippled by this depression. And it wasn't until I made a few changes, I realized obviously that this was something that I needed to really address. And one of the things, I surrounded myself with people that inspired me. I really made a conscious decision to do that. I started talking about what I was going through, right? I started talking with my family, my friends, as well as therapists, right? Which I'm a huge advocate for, right? I think if anybody can talk to a therapist, it's a huge gift because you learn so much about yourself, right? It's something that's very highly stigmatized, but it shouldn't be. And also,
like somehow you failed if you go to a therapist.
Right,
that's
and
the idea.
Yeah, and I don't understand, because if you play basketball, have you failed if you have a basketball coach?
No.
Like, it doesn't make any sense. This is the biggest game of your life.
Absolutely.
You should have someone to help you manage and navigate difficult decisions. And so, and also I started, we talk about purpose today. I started thinking about what my purpose was, and for me, that came down to a list, right? It came down to a bucket list, which is essentially a list of all the things that were important to me in my life. And from there, this started this whole journey that completely changed my life.
Yeah, tell me about that. So you became the unbelievable star of the Buried Life, and many people at home have watched that show, and it did really well. You also became the author of a #1 best-selling New York Times best-selling book. Tell me about this Buried Life and how you came to come up with that.
Well, so I made the decision to surround myself with people that inspired me. That was the first thing. The second was I surveyed my friends, and I chose some friends that fit that bill. And we started talking about doing something that was meaningful, and we wanted to make a documentary. Now, we didn't know what it was going to be about. We just knew that we had all these things inside of us that we wanted to do that we weren't doing.
Yeah.
And then serendipitously, my friend Johnny got assigned a poem in English class called The Buried Life. And this poem articulated this feeling, 150-year-old poem, written by an English guy in his 50s, and it talked about how the day-to-day buries what you really want to do. And we thought, that's how we feel, like we feel buried. And so we thought, let's make a list, the most epic bucket list we could ever imagine, and when we write it, let's just pretend we can do anything. So we didn't think about how we could do it, we just pretended we could do anything, like we were superheroes, and we wrote this list, and it was things like make a TV show, write a New York Times bestseller, go to space, make a movie, and then we just thought, okay, let's just go after this list. And every time we cross something off, let's help a stranger we meet along the way do something that they want to do. So we'll cross something off our list and we'll help someone else along the way. And it was a 2-week road trip to make this documentary. And 10 years later, we're still doing it. And what we learned is that this bucket list has really turned into more of a lifestyle, right? It's more about, instead of just having specific things, it's about prioritizing these things that are important to you so they don't get buried, because they will get buried, you know, by the day to day. And that's what we learned from the poem, and that's how we were feeling. I felt buried. I wasn't going after my true passions, and it manifested in this list.
That's awesome. So, you know, the idea is, I think, again, as Master also was saying in the previous segment, is find out how you want to feel, find out the things that you can do that make you feel that way. And that's exactly what you and your friends did. And that's an amazing story. And we watched the show, and an English class poem led to this amazing success. We'll find out what was on his bucket list, and we'll reveal what his 2 essential components are for living with purpose. We'll be back after this. Please stay with us. We're watching the Dr. Nandi Show, and we have Ben Nemtin with us. He's the star of TV's The Buried Life, and his life was buried once until he realized he had to get his act together and start making plans. And so we were chatting just a few minutes ago, and so what 2 steps or 2 essential things do you think that folks have to really achieve to live a life with purpose, in your opinion?
I mean, first I think it's accountability. And because I think accountability is so important just to drive you forward. So you can be accountable by writing down your dreams, right? This is the foundation of your life essentially.
Yeah.
So you're taking something that's an idea and you're making it real. You're basically breathing life into it. So I think that's an easy way to build accountability, but it's also really important. And the second is to talk about your dreams. Talk about these things you want to do, because 1, you don't know who can help you. And 2, when you talk about them, I posted my New Year's resolutions on Instagram. I think about that a lot, and that drives me forward. That accountability is good. Now, the second is bravery, because a lot of people stop at fear, you know, as we talked about. And, you know, I think people are afraid what other people might think, and I think people are afraid that if they fail, people might look down upon them. But I think, you know, what you learn from failure is so important. You know, usually it forces a pivot that you need to make to succeed. At the very least, you learn something about yourself, and that is far greater than the potential hit to your reputation that you might feel if you fail, and that's how you grow. And so that fear really holds people back.
And, you know, for us, you know, my wife and I, we hold each other accountable. And the other thing, for those of you who are watching, you know, he talked about tribe and surrounding yourself with the right tribe. If you hold yourself and your tribe accountable, you get that whole purpose-driven life. And so, for example, when we're writing our shows or we're doing something on social, we say, go back to ourselves and say, is this meet with what we want to do? Is this meet with how we want to feel? And you always hold yourself accountable. And the author, Brene Brown, I'm sure you've read her book, she talks about living a brave life, right? Taking the risk. And I tell my kids, imagine doing something and not being afraid to fail. Imagine that. Imagine how many times in your life you're watching at home and here you've not done something because you're afraid something will happen. And often something bad will happen, rather. And often that never happens, and you're crippled by that fear. And even if you do fail, what you learn is often better than the outcome that you've had. And how has that worked in your life, being accountable?
Well, I mean, it's been great to work with 3 friends, right? They keep me accountable all the time. And I think, too, back to your point about bravery, because I think bravery is attached to audaciousness. And I think audaciousness is extremely important, because you think about 99% of the world does not believe they can do great things. So they shoot for mediocre goals, which means the level of competition is highest for mediocre goals. Therefore, if you shoot for unrealistic goals, there's less competition.
Very few people out there.
And you have a higher chance of getting it done. And
I like that.
It's so simple, and people say, oh, that's, you know, that can't be true. But it is true, because we've been able to go after these things that we thought were just so impossible. And somehow we found a way to make them happen. And that's just proved that, like, if 4 regular guys can do it, then you can do it. And
this dude launched something into space, by the way. It's crazy. He took something, you tell him, you put it in orbit, right?
Yeah, we promised that if our book hit #1 New York Times, we'd send it to space. So then we didn't think we'd actually hit #1, and it did, and we had to figure out a way to get it to space. And
they did.
Yeah, and I think, too, the other thing that's really worth mentioning is that, like, you know, because a lot of this is about purpose, and if you don't feel like you're following your purpose, you feel like you feel down. right? You don't feel fulfilled. And I think if you're able to help somebody else in that moment when you feel down, that really takes yourself out of your own body and you actually get to connect with someone else, and that really helps you. And I think helping other people, not only does it help you, but it also helps you get things done. Because people see you out in the world doing great things, they want to help you, and that supports your mission. So that is, something that can't be overlooked when you're talking about purpose.
Generosity and gratitude, that defines Ben. I know him personally, and I know he does this. Generosity and gratitude takes you to the next level in purpose. And Mastin said this also. It's not about really all about I'm going to get this and get that, but rather, think about a problem to solve, right?
Yeah.
Think about a problem where, you're talking about poverty or talking about something else, and how are you going to solve it? And that giving to others is just such an amazing sense a feeling that you get. So when you get that feeling, you say, how can I make the rest of my life so that I can feel that way? And that's how you kind of define purpose. Now, what are the steps that you took and for others to grab your life back? You were at the depths, right?
Yeah.
And you never thought you would come back. What can others do as you did to grab your life back?
Right. So first is to stop and think about what's important. And as you said, if you can't think about something that is going to be really meaningful to you, feel what excites you when you think about it. So follow that excitement, right? So that's the first thing. Second is write it down, because that makes it real, and that's an important step. And it's easy, but it actually creates accountability. And now you have your dreams on a piece of paper. This is the foundation that you're going to grow from, okay? The third is talk about it. Because if you don't talk about it, no one can help you. And that's the only way we cross things off our list, is through the help of other people.
Absolutely.
Right? And think big and be brave and be audacious, because as I said, being audacious, you surround yourself. People are drawn to you with an audacious goal. They want to be with like-minded people. They want to have a higher purpose. And persistence, right? Persistence essentially increases your odds of succeeding, right? It sounds simple, but success is a combination of not just a good product, but of getting it out there again and again and again. And you need those two things. And that's how entrepreneurs ultimately succeed, right? Is through persistence.
Absolutely.
And all those things coupled with giving back and helping others.
Huge. Generosity, reciprocity. I can't say it enough. You can always continue to do things for yourself, but the moment when you realize that you can do for others and you can really give, and that comes back in spades. 100%. And that's not the reason why you do it, because sometimes it doesn't come back at all. Mm-hmm. But remember, how it makes you feel, you advance your purpose, you advance your goals. Amazing stuff. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's such a privilege to have you. Of course, Ben Nemtin giving us teachings and really, to me, life-changing, and how to make something that seems impossible, possible. We have to take a break. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Partha Nandi, and if you enjoyed that video, you're going to love the next one. It's full of incredible information to help you start your health hero journey.